Hi, it's Kamon Reynolds, and it's getting late in the evening and it's starting to cool down. Finally getting some cooler temperatures. The bees still need attention, and this colony right here is an okay sized nuke. It's not a very large one. It doesn't look that bad, and I think with some decent feeding it's going to do fine. However, I have another nucleus colony in that box right there that is not going to get big enough to overwinter with a high chance of success, and I don't want to fool with it. So we're going to combine these two together. And you might notice, hey, I've got a nuke box over here. I normally don't have colonies in these things, but this is one that I was given, so that's cool. And we're going to be using that today. So a lot of times you can use newspaper for this. We're going to be using parchment today because I don't have any newspapers around. I thought I did. I don't. Parchment or wax paper or something really thin. Parchment works fantastic. Bees, we know, chew through it because a lot of times we use it for feeding pollen patties. This is a new recipe right here, really nice and moist. So we're basically just going to do something like that, and you're going to be like, wow, this is real fancy, Kamon. You know, we specialize in fancy around here. So what we're doing is we are keeping this bottom hive away from the hive that we're fixing to add. We're giving them time to get used to one another, plus we have the pollen patty, so that's going to help as well. So I like, if there's not a nectar flow going, I really like to give them some feed, and in this way that is going to help de-stress them, and also, you know, just gives them something from coming from both directions. So what we want to do, and if it's really hot, by the way, you're going to need some upper ventilation, so you can either have a screen on top where the bees can't get out, but they can get some ventilation. The bottom, you don't have to worry about that because they have the front entrance. But say you put a bunch of bees up top and it's like 90, 100 degree heat indexes, and it's completely sealed with the paper, the lid seals it, they're going to cook up there. It will happen if there's enough bees. Because they just can't ventilate that top box, so you're going to want to make sure that they have some ventilation. Now, some people will take some toothpicks or something really tiny like that in the corners where it'll keep this next box up just enough where you can get some ventilation in there. I've done that before and that worked pretty well. But keep in mind, you can always just take a piece of like window screen you can get from the hardware store for like $1 or $2, enough to cover a nuke or a hive like this, and you can just lay that over the top of your box, and then put something to keep that lit up a little bit, and then that way they can get plenty of ventilation there. So let's get this other hive and throw it on. Here's our next nuke box, and it's getting down pretty cool right now, so we're not going to be putting anything in between these boxes. If anything, the heat from the bottom hive is going to help the other hive do pretty well. Now I've already gotten rid of the queen in that colony right there. There's an okay amount of bees in here. It's not a bunch, but I figure with a little bit of brood that they have in this one, and that colony down there had about 2.5 frames of brood. Not solid, but you know, it wasn't that bad. That together with a little bit of feeding, they'll do all right. We're fixing to find out. And we're definitely going to be feeding them. And we've already got that patty below. There's a little patty up here. So there's a little brood on this frame. And one thing I failed to do before we stuck the box on is I did perforate this area right here. But I'm going to go ahead and just make some really tiny slits, and this is going to make it to where the bees can chew through it quicker. It's going to take still a little while for the bees to get through all this. We don't want to make any really big slits, but just something like right there where you can just a little line where the bees can get their mandibles down in there and start tearing that apart from both sides and getting through it. So we just probably made about 25 of those down through here. And you're going to want to do that because it's really hard for them, just like it is with us, to grip smooth paper like that and just start working it. It's just slick. Alright, let's get the rest of these bees out of here. I think together, though, this will work out pretty good. And that's a pretty good frame of brood right there. I mean, for this time of the year. So this colony below is going to get a little help from this up top. They have some brood on the other frame. they're definitely going to need some feed. Both of these colonies are light on feed. Our fall flow was not good, and then on top of that, these were small colonies, so they just didn't have the forager power. It's amazing because the bigger colonies, some of them have, you know, 7, 8 frames of goldenrod and whatnot. They definitely didn't draw any comb. That's a really good looking frame right there, brood. The queen below had a better pattern, I thought, so I eliminated this one up here. Boy, I probably should have cleaned the frame rest here. It makes it a little hard to maneuver. Alright, there's not much on this frame at all. No stores, no brood, nothing. But there is adhering bees, so we want those. Alright, now we're going to scoot all this over to one side. And drop that below. I don't think, yeah, there's no way I'm fitting one of my frame feeders on this nuke box right here. They're just not made big enough for it. So what I'm going to do now with these bees that I have down in this nuke box is I'm just going to knock them out. Not knock them out, but just knock them out of the box. Now check this out right here. I don't think I've really talked about this much. So this is a robber screen, and it's completely sealed up front. They have the screen here for ventilation, but as robber bees come in, they smell down here where the entrance is, and they try to go here, and they're not really good about finding this upper entrance right here. And you can staple them on, but it just goes right down in there, and you can make them yourself. Nothing fancy about that at all, but the bees will go up here. So these bees will eventually work their way into the hive. What we're going to do is we are going to grab a frame of honey from another colony, and then we'll stick that over here, and then we're going to stick this inner cover right here, and I'm going to invert that, and then we're going to put a quart feeder with some of that Pro Sweet, or some of that, you can use some of that really thick invert syrup that we make, and stick that on top so those bees can start taking that in, because this colony needs a lot of honey. Thankfully we have several colonies that have a few extra frames of honey in them, so we'll probably grab a full frame, stick it over here, and then we'll keep that feed on. And honestly, we'll keep it on until they stop taking it, because when you're using thick feed like Pro Sweet or that invert syrup like we showed you in the video how to make that, you're not going to hurt the colony feeding it as long as they'll take it. I mean, of course you don't want to pack the colony too much at certain times of the year, but it's not going to cause the colony to have issues like if you were feeding 1-to-1 or something that was really light, that they have to evaporate all that moisture out of. This stuff right here, if they don't use it, what's in the jar stays in the jar, and then what they stick in the cell is already what it needs to be. So that's one of the reasons I like it. So we'll get a jar and stick it up here. Probably 2 days from now they'll have chewed through that, maybe less, and they'll be working together as a team. So this right here is one way that you can help not lose some of your bees that are probably not going to make it. I seriously doubt that this colony was going to make it. This one right here might have, but together, both being healthy little colonies, I'd say together now they're probably, once all that brood hatches out, going to cover 6 to 7 frames. We're going to feed them the protein, feed them the syrup, and I think this colony is going to do pretty well. So we're going to kind of keep an eye on this one in future videos, and we're definitely going to be getting some feed on as soon as this video is done. So I'm going to be sticking that other nuke box over there and then putting that feed. So thanks for watching the video. If you have any comments or questions about doing any of this right here, leave it below.